Coming to you from the Black Swan Media Studios, this is Fireside Chats, talking to the real difference makers in the world. Now, here is your host, John Crump.
Happy Monday, everyone. If you're in Virginia, tomorrow is primary day for the Republicans. Last week, we had all three candidates that are running for the Republican nomination to take on the gun grabber, Mark Warner, in the Senate. So whoever wins the primary is going to get my full support. But I'm not going to tell you who to vote for in the primary, but I will tell you not to vote for Mark Warner because he is a jackass gun grabber. Laura, you're probably watching this in backstage. The counter doesn't work. That's why you keep on seeing a jumping numbers. So that's what's going on here. Yep. Happy Monday, Mason. Okay, I want to get into a couple different things before we get out there. As people know, my niece has cancer, and I'm donating all the money that I get from my PayPal at paypal.me/JohnCC, my Patreon, which is patreon.com/John Crump. That's patreon.com/John Crump. You can see the little scroll at the bottom of it. For all the money that I raised through those two things, go there. There is also a GoFundMe that you should subscribe. You should find down in the description if you want to give directly to them. But I'm going to tell you a couple cool things. If you come in at the $5 level, you get this awesome little patch. And you'll get patches like this throughout the year, cards and stuff like that. Once I get them back in stock, you'll also get a little pocket constitution. Everyone needs a pocket constitution. Well, while we're on the subject of rights, I want to bring in our guest. There is a group that I wholeheartedly support, and they're called the DC Project. They're women from 50 different states, led by Diane Muller, who was in front of Congress, who said, "I shall not comply." Diane Muller is a good friend of the show. Rod Izell, who's on the show, good friend. Holly, good friend. Tons of Cheryl Todd, for example, good friend of the show. They've all been on. So for the next 2 weeks, I'm doing all women, all DC Project women. So for the first one to kick off the series of the show, I have Laura Evans from New York. How you doing, Laura?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
Good. By the way, have you ever heard of X-Tech Tactical?
No.
They make really, really cool accessories, mostly AK based, but they're coming out with a new AR one. This right here is one of their prototypes. I got two of their prototypes. I've been actually helping them for the past year on this, and it's a speed loader built in, so you can just put it on there. It's not a sponsor thing, but it's kind of cool.
Oh. Well, it's not legal in New York, so.
Yeah, that's the reason why I show that. I wanted to talk to you about some stuff in New York. So you are from the DC Project. For the people out there who don't know, I just noticed if an X on the bottom of it. That's pretty cool. For people who don't know, what is the DC Project?
So the DC Project is, when we were founded about 5 years ago, it was Diana Muller's idea to bring one woman from every state in the country to Washington, D.C. once a year while Congress was in session and visit with congresspeople and senators face-to-face to show them female Second Amendment supporters, to share our stories and to talk with them about why the Second Amendment is important to us, and to really focus the foundation on education versus legislation. So our kind of motto is education, not legislation. We feel like there's enough legislation already and less is more in that case. What's happened is we have had such success in doing that. Last year, last September, when the House Judiciary Committee was holding their hearings on the 2019 assault weapons ban, they invited Diana, our founder, to testify in front of them. And she was one of two friendlies on a panel of otherwise unfriendlies that testified. I was fortunate enough to be there in the audience and listen to and watch her testimony. As a result of that, she made the comment that she would not comply with the assault weapons ban if it was something that became law. And that sort of went viral, and she kind of hit the interview circuit a little bit, Fox and Friends and some other folks that she spoke to. So it was a really beneficial experience to actually be in the Capitol, to see how that side of our government works, and to have to sort of sit in that hearing room and listen to the politicians enjoy hearing themselves speak, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, she did a great job in front of Congress, and the DC project is something that I think really needs to get pushed out there. She was on Fox and Friends recently, in fact, I think like a week ago or so.
Yeah, I have not seen that yet. I need to get on that. But a lot of the women who are involved in the DC project are fantastic at getting press. You mentioned Holly Sullivan. She's very active in Connecticut, and Cheryl Todd in Arizona, Rhonda Izell in Illinois and Chicago. And that's one of the things that makes the DC project as an organization really so powerful. We're all just regular women from all over the country, and each of us have a little bit of a different story about what brought us to the group and why the Second Amendment is important to us. Speaking for myself, I was not raised in a gun-friendly environment. I was raised to fear guns and everything about them. And it was really only when I started working in the firearms industry, in marketing and public relations, and got to know a lot of the folks in the industry, and at that point really embraced the idea of what the Second Amendment means and why it's important to our country, and subsequently why it's important to me. And that's really why I've chosen to take up some of my personal time in this type of advocacy. I like that when we visit Washington, D.C., we don't march up into the Capitol office buildings, all 50 of us together. We break into groups of about 4 to 5 women, and it's really compelling experience to be in a group of women that you spend about 2 or 3 days with, and you travel back and forth from the hotel. You have all your meetings together, and you really get to know people that in some walks of life you may never have an opportunity to get to know, because we're from all different places and all different backgrounds and religions and sexual orientations, and we're extremely diverse. We're nonpartisan, which I think lends us some credibility when it comes to walking into a legislator's office, because they can't really push our buttons one way or the other in terms of politics. But what we can do is give them a real world story in their office as we sit down with them about how, let's say, for example, the red flag law may have an unintended consequence against somebody that's in a domestic violence situation, or how campus carry isn't allowed, and how many different women in particular in our organization alone were survivors of assaults of various different kinds on college campuses because they couldn't be armed. So it's just, for me personally, the best part about the DC project is the same thing that I like about the firearms industry and working in it. It's the people. Every time I take a trip to DC with these women, I'm energized and recharged and inspired. And it isn't by the, let's say, it's not the presence of Washington, D.C. that can have an effect on people because it's so beautiful and, storied and so much happens there. And, it's a special place. That's not what really gives me the energy. It's the women that I get to spend the time with and learn their stories personally from them as they share those stories with different lawmakers and sometimes staffers. And it sometimes just gives you chills, and you could be like, we usually have, I would say, between the 4 to 5 women that are on each team. We probably have sometimes up to 20 or more meetings per visit to DC with lawmakers from all over the country. And each meeting is a little bit different. Each time somebody shares a story of their own experience, they may share a different detail that they didn't share from the meeting before. And just to see how other people react, to see how sometimes we get to see these legislators have a light bulb moment where they say, I really didn't realize that was how that particular legislation may affect you or have an effect on your life. And it's also nice to see how surprised they are that a group of women come in. We're always dressed professionally. We wear business clothing, and we're not jumping on elevators and throwing our phones in their faces and yelling at them and trying to instigate them into an altercation. We're very respectful, regardless of where they stand on the Second Amendment. I think that the meetings that we have with the people who are anti-Second Amendment are much more effective than those that we have with the folks who are on the same side as us.
Yeah, a couple questions there that you hit on. One of the things you talk about, the women, a lot of them are survivors of some type of attack. From doing this show, I have a lot of women on. It's probably 50-50, if not more women. It actually, over in the next 2 weeks, my guests are going to be mostly women, which is unusual because the fire, you wouldn't think that. But one of the things that when I compare, like when I always ask, well, how'd you get into guns? You kind of explained how you got into guns. A much larger, higher percentage of women got into guns because they were assaulted or had some type of violence against them. And a gun can be a great equalizer.
Yeah, my entrance into the world of firearms did not come directly from an assault that happened to me. It didn't really even occur to me until years later that had I had the forethought to arm myself, that perhaps that wouldn't have happened. And it happened. It was somebody that I knew. But I started working in the firearms industry at an air gun company. And they also manufactured airsoft. I remember my first day of work walking into this, where my little cubicle was, and there were racks of guns all over the place. And at the time, I didn't know the difference between a revolver and a semi-auto. I didn't know the difference between a rifle and a shotgun. I didn't know the difference between an airsoft gun, a BB gun, or a pellet rifle. I didn't know any of that. So as I walk in and I sit down, a couple of the people that were in the area that I was working in were having an airsoft fight with each other, and they were shooting, full auto airsoft BBs across the office at each other. And I thought, what the hell did I just get myself into? But that was my entrance into the world of guns, and found that for me, being introduced to shooting with air guns was great. I didn't have to worry about recoil. I wasn't afraid of the noise. And it was just a really good way for me to learn how to shoot. I had prior in my life only fired a firearm once. And my ex-husband took me to sight in his shotgun before deer season with his father, and it was a 12 gauge, of course, and they put a target up on a tree, and he handed me the gun and he said, "Here, shoot." I didn't have eyes or ears or anything, and I just lifted the gun and pulled the trigger and landed on my ass with a big bruise on my shoulder. But I hit the bullseye. He never took me again because he didn't hit the bullseye. So I was pretty afraid for a while. But that's my story. And then once I really started to realize that I enjoyed shooting was at SHOT Show. And being in the industry, and you know this, John, there's so many really awesome opportunities for those of us that work in the industry to have different places where we can go and experience guns that a lot of people don't get. We get to see all the new stuff at range day at SHOT Show, or different range experiences that we have through media events and things like that. And so I remember the first time I shot a full auto machine gun. I could have done that all day. I couldn't get enough. They finally had to drag me away from the gun because I think I used up almost all their ammo. So, yeah, I mean, now I don't shoot as much as I'd like to. But part of that has to do with where I live, and part of that has to do with probably my own laziness. When I got my concealed carry permit in New York, at the time it was averaging about between 12 and 16 months for people to get their permit. Luckily, I happened to know some people in law enforcement, and so it didn't take me that long. But it really shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't take anybody that long to get a concealed carry permit. And I didn't have any outstanding reason to fear for my own safety. But if I had, that's one of the things that bothers me about how the Second Amendment is handled in my state, in New York. There are two DC Project, I'll say, delegates in New York. I am one of the New York delegates, and the leader for New York State is Lauren Hartnett, and she lives down in Staten Island. So when we go to Washington and set up our meetings, she takes the downstate folks, and I take everybody outside of New York City and Orange County and down there, Long Island.
Got to deal with those guys.
Yeah.
Question for you: when you walk into a anti-gun legislator's office, do they already have their minds made up, or do you have any chance of changing it? Because I hear a lot of people say, "Oh, people go speak to them, they're wasting their time. They're not going to change their minds. Their minds are made up. They're not going to listen to people."
I'm not typically an argumentative person. I would rather just communicate with someone and get to know them a little bit and kind of figure out what makes them tick. And when I go into the meetings, if I happen to be a group leader, which sometimes I am, I usually just say to whoever it is that we're meeting with, this is my name. I'll give them a little bit of background on myself, like kind of what I shared with you already. And then I say to them, we each of us will tell you a little bit about ourselves and what brought us on this journey to visit you and talk about the Second Amendment. And when we're done, we'd like for you to be able to have some time to ask us whatever questions you have. And then we'd like to talk to you about where you stand on the Second Amendment, or sometimes we'll say, you know, we might like to talk to you about if we know in particular that there's some pending legislation that they've sponsored or co-sponsored or things along those lines, just so that they sort of know what to expect in the meeting. We don't want to catch anybody off guard. It's not our purpose to antagonize. What we tell them, or what I always tell them, is that we're here for the long haul. We'll be back again next year and hope to meet with you again. And we really want to be a resource for you. We want you to know that if you have questions about guns or gun safety or gun legislation, or you need to talk to somebody who's had a particular experience, maybe one of us in this little group doesn't have that, but somebody within our overall group absolutely will have information that we can share with you. And we'd rather have you come and ask us a question and get an answer from some people who are experts in different fields as far as gun legislation and gun safety and things along those lines go, than to make a fool of yourself by, you know, calling it a clip or whatever the other moronic things are that some of them say.
For everyone out there, hit that thumbs up button. And remember always to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're not subscribed, subscribe. Okay, question about, not really a question about red flag laws, but I just want to get your opinion. With all this police reform stuff going on around DC and stuff like that, and Congress and stuff, some people think that this could be a door to show how dangerous red flag laws can be. Do you believe that we can reverse the push for red flag laws?
I think that we have to try. I think if you give up, then what's the point, right? I mean, we have to try. We can't give up. My husband is a captain in the New York State Police, and so I've been sort of on the inside of hearing kind of what's going on from the management side of how things are perceived at a higher level, you know, through the government.
Tell them thank you, by the way.
Sorry?
Tell them thank you, by the way. I don't think
cops absolutely.
Especially now they don't hear thank you enough. It's this thankless job. My father-in-law was a New York City cop, and I have some cousins that are cops, and
it's hard. The morale right now is just awful. And Rochester is the closest big city to where I live. And it's not a big city, but it's the largest city. And I grew up on the west side of Rochester. And a lot of what we saw on the news in the last few weeks, some of the viral clips came from Rochester. You see that poor woman barefoot. She looks like she's about 4'8", and she's getting beat up by a 2x4 with a guy with a 2x4 out in front of, you know, her apartment. And it just, and now they have a police accountability board in the city of Rochester, which is run by people who don't really like police. So I wish that I could say that the intent of the red flag laws was honorable and good, but I don't believe that it is. I think the intent is to just strip us of our Second Amendment rights even more than they already are, particularly in New York.
It's all about control.
It really is. And the fearful part about it is the lack of due process. And that's really what we've talked to some of these lawmakers about. Last year, about a year ago, one of the people that we had been trying to get in to see for a number of years was Kirsten Gillibrand. And she was, at the time last year, still making her presidential run. So we didn't get to meet with her, but we did get to meet with her Second Amendment legislative aide, who just so happens to be from Rochester, the city that I was talking to you about. And a lot of times when we meet with the legislative aides and we don't actually get an opportunity to meet with the legislator themselves. You know, if they're not friendly, we can tell. They roll their eyes, they, you know, futz around with their pens or whatever. They have all kinds of things that they do to kill time while they're trying to ignore what we're telling them. But this woman was fascinated by what we had to say and legitimately interested, and kept us there for almost an hour and a half, which just surprised all of us. Considering Kirsten Gillibrand's record, I mean, she had, prior to becoming a senator, she had been, you know, not scored an F as far as the NRA was concerned. But when we talked to her about the fact that there's no due process with the way the red flag law was suggested in you know, at the federal level, she was really surprised and didn't realize that. And she took notes and asked a lot of questions. And I think that there's no guarantee that she went back to the senator and said, you know, these are some things that we need to keep in mind or consider, whatever. But your question about, you know, should we try? Absolutely, we should try. If we don't, then we might not have the opportunity to talk to somebody like her that might be able to make a little bit of a difference on our behalf.
Yeah, I mean, I think we definitely have to try. We don't try that. I mean, kind of, if we try, even if we don't get through to them, it shows them that there is some sort of resistance out there.
Well,
to it.
They win. If we don't try, they win.
Yeah, true. All right. So being from New York, which is not a gun-friendly state, and you represent basically the upstate New York. I go to Long Island about once a month, and there is a huge difference from what's going on and what people think in that part of like the city and the suburbs of the city, and then upstate. It's like two different states.
It really is.
It really is. But before we get into that, I just want to remind everyone that Super Chats is now active, and all funds go to my niece who has brain cancer. So I'm raising money for her through my Super Chats. But getting back into this, I just needed to do the little plug there. But getting back into this, is it hard to explain to people that are not from New York that upstate New York and the New York that they think of is almost two different places, and there is a strong gun culture in upstate New York?
It is. For all of my adult life, whenever I've traveled, you know, away from home or met people that are not from here, and I say to them, I'm from New York, people automatically 100% of the time assume that I'm from the vicinity of New York City. Without fail, they think New York City. Well, I born and raised New Yorker, and I never visited New York City until I was 40 years old. And I had been all over the world. I'd been to Europe, I'd been to Mexico, I'd been to a lot of different states, but I had never actually visited New York City. I went there with my soon-to-be husband, and we got engaged in New York City. So it kind of holds a special place in my heart, but it is such a different world from the rest of the state. And people, I think, are under the impression that New York looks like New York City, and it really doesn't. It's very, there's a lot of agriculture and farming and manufacturing and skiing, and I just things that people who assume that everything is like New York City are amazed at when they find out just how different it really is.
Yeah, it's like Northern California. Northern California is very is very gun friendly. Not, but if you go down to Southern California, where everything is controlled from, it's like that. Actually, my wife and I had our first date in Central Park in New
Oh,
York.
that's where I got engaged.
Oh, that's awesome. My wife is a New Yorker. Yeah. So dealing with gun laws in New York, it's kind of crazy. And you have a concealed carry permit. There are a lot of people in New York that have been trying to get a concealed carry permit forever and have not been able to get it. Can you kind of give us a background of how to get a concealed carry permit in New York? You don't have to give like a walkthrough, but just some of the
Yeah.
requirements.
Well, it's different where I live, and I know it's significantly different than down in New York City and Long Island and Staten Island and all the
Long
different.
Island, you basically need a lawyer, or you're not going to
Yeah,
get one.
yeah. So where I live in Ontario County, which is very rural county. You have to fill out. I think it was about a 10-page questionnaire. You have to get 5 references from people that have known you for at least 10 years and at your current address. And you have to, it was a while ago, so I can't remember exactly all the details in it, and I don't think that it's changed. But so those 5 people will get called by a sheriff's deputy investigator. So if you list somebody as your reference that isn't going to pick up a phone call or return a message when the sheriff's investigator calls them to ask questions about you, you're not going to get your permit. And you have to, I think it was about $175 to get fingerprinted. So when all was said and done, it was a little over $200 for everything. And it honestly depends on your county clerk. And I think it's pretty easy to get the paperwork from the clerk. But once the sheriff's investigator does the background on you and gets all the questions answered that they need to from your references, then it goes to the desk of a judge, and the judge has complete discretion as to whether or not to issue your concealed carry permit.
That is really insane to me. And New York has no reciprocity with any other state.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Yeah, so it's just insane. And you have something called the SAFE Act up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, explain what the SAFE Act is to the people watching. This is insane. It blows my mind.
Honestly, I'm not an expert in the legalities. I just know that there are more people where I live that are anti-SAFE Act than there are people that are pro-SAFE Act. I know that it has a lot to do with magazine restrictions and how much ammo you can carry. I know when the governor passed the SAFE Act, I was at SHOT Show. I was actually at SHOT Show when this happened, and I remember my husband calling me at SHOT Show. He never calls me when I'm at SHOT Show. He knows how crazy it is. He called me. He's like, "Yeah, you're not going to believe this. We have to guard the governor when he comes to Rochester to make the announcement that about the SAFE Act with our New York State Police issued Glock sidearms that are now officially illegal in the state of New York because they carry more than 7 rounds."
Yeah, the SAFE Act. One of the things which I think is absolutely ridiculous about the SAFE Act is that it bans any semi-automatic rifle or pistol that's military style. Doesn't really go into what military style is, but military style.
Right. So now we have to have our AR-15s with those horrible stocks that just are that ugly shape and uncomfortable and awkward, and you can't have a pistol grip, and you can't have your stock can't fold. Just
Yeah, it has to be a featureless.
yeah.
I've also read that compliance in upstate is a lot lower than in a lot of other places than in the south of near New York City and stuff. In fact, there are some statistics that say that most people who had AR-15s um, didn't really comply with the SAFE Act too much in New York.
I can't speak to any numbers. The sense that I get from folks that I talk to is that they haven't, that a lot of people haven't necessarily registered them, or nor that do they intend to ever.
Yeah,
If they already own them.
yeah. If you look at the number of ARs that were in New York that were sold in New York before, and the number of ARs that were registered, unless a lot of people had a lot of boating accidents,
Yeah.
a lot,
Or
a lot of
a house burnt down, Yeah. Yeah. There are some laws, and I don't know the details of these laws because, as I said, I live 350 miles away from New York City. I don't ever go there, and it's foreign to me for all intents and purposes. But I've heard from a lot of people that I know that shoot competitively, and a lot of competition shooters travel. Well, if you have to travel through New York City, forget it, because you can't go through the airports with guns in New York City. It's just a nightmare. And you can, like, I've just heard horror stories about people getting arrested and having their guns confiscated. And
yeah. A few years ago, there was a guy arrested at JFK. The charges were eventually dropped. I think it was like 3 or 4 years ago. But he had a layover in JFK, and then his flight was canceled. So like, oh, we'll pick you up in a hotel room. But he had a gun, and they notified the cops, hey, this guy has a gun in his bag. And he was never meant, he wasn't supposed to be in New York at all. Supposed to be just a layover. But they
yeah,
arrested
right.
him anyway.
Yeah, I speechless.
Yeah.
And now, what you see going on in New York, which is similar to what we're seeing all over the country, with folks wanting to defund the police and create their little own anarchist kingdoms and all of that. It's scary. I think that as a woman, I am very, very thankful for the fact that I have a concealed carry permit, and that I can protect myself in the way that I choose. And that's one of the things that we like to say in the DC Project, in addition to education, not legislation, is that I am my own first responder. I am worth protecting. And you can't argue against that. I mean, I'm married to a cop, but when he's not here and I call 911, I live out in the country, so no one's going to get here real fast.
Yeah. It's really funny that the same people who say only police should have guns are the ones saying that we need to defund the police and get rid of them. Like, oh, make up your mind.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Makes no sense to me.
I agree.
Yeah, we live in a crazy time.
I thought that it was bad with all the quarantining from COVID, and in all honesty, I was thrilled to see that people were really giving people who perhaps may have been anti-gun prior to the quarantine days were really giving some thought to, wow, maybe I should consider learning more about firearms. Maybe I should go and by a shotgun. And it was very encouraging for me to see the industry really work toward welcoming these new shooters and these new gun owners, and concentrating so heavily on safety and responsibility and education. I think that's one of, like I said, that's one of the things that's great about the gun community. We're it's a welcoming group of people. Everyone wants to help. It's I think that's one of the things about gun owners that is kind of like a under the radar, sort of, not really a secret, but I don't think we promote enough how open we are to folks. One of the women who's a delegate, and she's also the California state director for the DC project. Her name is Gina Roberts. Do you know Gina?
No, I haven't had her on my show.
She's very, very interesting. I would suggest that you invite her.
Well, anyone from the DC project is invited.
Yeah.
I told Diana Muller, that's how I got in touch with you. I gave Diana Muller, I was like, anyone from the DC project has a blanket invite to come on the show. And Diana was like, I can get you some people. And all of a sudden my email box started going ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, she posted it on our private DC project leader page on Facebook. So I was like, oh, I know John. Let me get on there and give us some plugs. But so Gina is well over 6 feet tall, and Gina's transgender. And I had Gina was on my team in DC a few years ago, and to be totally honest with you, I didn't know any transgender people prior to that. And I thought, how the hell am I going to spend 3 days with this person? Like, what am I going to say? You know, like, I'm not sure how to handle this. But Gina is one of the most amazing people I've ever met. And I'm thankful that I was able to get past my own insecurities and open myself up enough to get to know her and to be open to getting to know her. And her story is phenomenal. She's a competitive shooter. I'm not. And she shared with me and with a lot of other people that the gun community was more open to her coming out as a transgender than the liberal community that you would assume would be more open to that. And she said she's never really felt any judgment from gun people. I think that's very telling about the culture, gun culture.
Yeah, I have a friend who's transgender, and she says that it was harder, and it was harder coming out as a gun owner, and she was less accepted by her liberal friends than when she came out as transgender to her gun friends. They're like,
Yeah.
she was like, yeah, the gun people just totally 100% accepted me. They're like, all right.
Yeah. Well, because with guns, they just like grow little wings and the triggers pull themselves, you know?
Yeah. But said she was like, her liberal friends were like, oh my God, I cannot believe that you own guns.
Well,
that's crazy.
And it's, I mean, that also is one of the good things about our organization. And like I said, we're nonpartisan. We have liberals that are part of our group. And it's necessary for us to have people from all political backgrounds associated with us, just as it is to have people of all sexual orientations and ages. We've got women in their 70s. We've got young women that are teenagers, still. And I think we had a few that joined us as middle schoolers. it not only does it give each of us an opportunity to meet other people that are different from us, but it shows the legislators when we walk in that we truly are diverse and nonpartisan. We don't just say it. We put our money where our mouth is in that regard.
I'm not sure how long you've been in the industry. I've been in it for a while now, and I have seen the attitudes when it comes to women and firearms, and just in a short period of time, like let's say 10 years, have totally changed. Women are the fastest growing demographic of gun owners. And at first, it seemed like people were kind of men. So I'll say men, but not really people. But I mean, well, men aren't people, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
The men were oh, women, blah blah blah. They shouldn't be shooting. Then like 10 years later, it's like every guy is like, oh, that's awesome that women are shooting. Oh, what do you think led to that change? I don't know if you've experienced that change or not, but
yeah. So I started in the industry in around 2008, and back then it seemed like there were still a lot of booth babes at SHOT Show. There were still a lot of really, I'm just going to say it, like nasty but ugly pink camouflage guns that were just, just not attractive. And I think that more women have just come to realize that there are times in their lives when they don't want to be dependent on somebody else for either their own protection or their own recreation or their own, sporting activities, their own food, and women have just, I mean, we're the ones who are most of the time buying everything.
well, I'm not talking about
For us.
I'm not really talking about how the women's attitudes changed. What I'm talking about,
The men?
yeah, the men's attitude towards women and shooting have changed drastically in the 10 years. I used to be one of the outliers who said, no, we need to get more women into shooting. But now, my opinion seems to be the mainstream opinion, which it used to not be.
Yeah, I honestly think that a lot of it had to do in a big picture way with how the pipeline, how the sales pipeline worked. I think that there were companies that tried to get on board with developing products specifically for women, but what they found was that their dealer base wasn't necessarily interested in buying them from the manufacturers. And what needed to happen was that women needed to speak up and say, I want a shotgun that fits me better, or I want a lighter weight AR platform, or I want a gun with these features, and it doesn't necessarily have to be lighter, or it doesn't have to be a pretty color or whatever. Just they're more interested in the features than they are in the colors. And I think now that the women have been more vocal about what their needs are, and I think social media has done a lot to amplify that as well. The dealer base has come on board and really started to realize, yeah, now that they've been telling us in the industry for the last probably, what would you guess, 7 to 10 years, that women are the fastest growing demographic in firearms. Well, maybe we should shit or get off the pot and actually start stocking some firearms and some accessories and clothing and some classes, education specified just to women.
Yeah, that's one thing. When I owned some gun shops, I had a large women's section. Carried women's sizes and stuff for like shooting gear and stuff like that, and it worked out for me. I sold a lot.
Well, I mean, you talk to women who, even like women who hunt, who historically spent much of their lives wearing men's, hunting clothing. That's not an issue anymore. We can find it just about anywhere these days. But I do think that it was endemic to the industry in that, as an industry, we are a little bit slow on the upswing. We were a little bit slow to embrace digital marketing. We were a little bit slow to, get away from some printed publications and go more digital. And so I think maybe a little bit of an older base, and definitely, to your point, male dominated, but it's becoming much more diverse.
Yeah. I've been writing for probably most of my stuff I write for is online. I do like written stuff. Every once in a while, I do written stuff all the time, but written stuff for like a print magazine, like outdoor magazine. I was just in. I had like the cover feature, but I did have my first cover shoot, not cover shoot, but I'll show you. This is kind of funny. I just want to show everyone out there. I finally got my picture in a magazine. I've written for magazines. But, let me just show you this picture.
Oh, here it is. That. Yeah.
Yeah, that's me.
It totally works.
Yeah, it's just funny.
And it's funny that you say that, because I have been in this industry writing for so long, but I typically write for my clients or my employers, copywriting and those kinds of things. But I've just had my first piece published in Shooting Industry magazine in the May issue, which was a women's issue, all about the DC project. So I'll pat you on the back, and you can pat me on the back.
Oh, yeah, I'm patting you on the back. I see Clover Tack out there. You know what Clover Tack is?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, you should go on his show. Hook you guys up. He's a really good guy. He does Firearms Fridays, and he does a bunch of other podcasts, firearms podcasts.
Oh,
he has pretty good reach.
I know we're social media friends.
Okay. All right, I got you. Yeah, good guy. We share guests from time to time. Even though that I'm really bad, and he'll be like, "Yo, can you hook me up?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." Then I just totally forget about him, blank out. I have so much stuff going on.
I have that issue. And the reason that we're not online right now in my office, which is upstairs, is because I have a little sign behind my desk that says CRS, can't remember shit. And I just didn't think that would be appropriate for your audience. So I'm in my living room.
That would be totally fine with my audience. You don't know my audience. You should see some of the uncensored stuff that comes with the censored stuff that it catches, that YouTube catches and Facebook catches for review comments.
Yeah, I'm pretty uncensored, but I thought I'd behave for you today.
Lawrence, for example, made a comment about Antifa that I can't really put up here. Out of the blue, we were talking about Antifa, but yet,
so
yeah, my audience is. I'm pretty much hands off. I know most 90% of the time that my stuff is going to get demonetized. I'm not even really concerned about that. Even though Super Chats is open and all funds go to cancer treatments for my niece. Just want to throw that out there one more time.
So I know I'm sort of changing the subject on you, but tell me about your niece a little bit.
She is actually from New York. 3 weeks ago, she was a happy little girl, totally fine. And she just got a bad headache. And it lasted for days. So they took her to the emergency room and they said, "Oh, it's a migraine. Give her some medicine, send her home." And then she started getting really dizzy, couldn't see. They had to do CPR on her and stuff like that. And they did an MRI, and she had a massive tumor on her brainstem, and it's DIPG, which is a really aggressive form of cancer. Um, the so most kids only last like 9 months after being diagnosed, and she has the most
Is she?
aggressive form. 9.
Oh, poor thing.
Yeah, so she went from not, being like 3 weeks ago being a normal kid to now she's in a wheelchair and everything else. So it's
Oh my gosh. Wow.
yeah, it can, and the medical bills are just insane, and the cancer treatments are really expensive. So I'm dedicating all my money that I make through my Patreon, through my super chat. We have a GoFundMe set up, my YouTube revenue, my writing revenue. I have a t-shirt company. All the proceeds are all going to her. Every single penny.
Nice. Well, you must be the favorite uncle, right?
Oh, everyone is chipping in. So
Yeah.
we'll get through this. It's gonna be hard, but it's something that we have to do as a family, and families pull together.
Yeah, yeah. It is amazing how much support your family members can give you. My mom was ill last year, and I wouldn't have been able to get through that and trying to help my dad and others in my family without the support of my family. So I get it. But I'll definitely keep her in my thoughts and prayers, and I'll look up the different. Can you like post that stuff? The different links,
Yeah.
like t-shirts and all that.
Yeah, I definitely will. It's usually in the description. I think I forgot to put the GoFundMe in the description, but
Okay.
I'll go back and do that and stuff like that. CloverTax says that I do suck at sharing network contacts for sure, and he thinks everyone suffers from CRS.
All right. Well, yeah. I
I
think
don't know why.
a lot
Coming through.
worse than most normal people, but yeah, everybody suffers.
Yeah, I tell CloverTax, just remind me. I'm not gonna remember. Yeah, you should check out the show. He is a friend of the DC Project. He had Cheryl Todd on and other people. How can people out there help you out at the DC Project? They help DC Project help you out with whatever you need help out. Help
Yeah.
with.
So we had to cancel our trip to DC this year, obviously because of
Yeah,
COVID. And now with all this rioting, I'm heartbroken because a lot of the places that are so beautiful and wonderful and free in Washington D.C. that anyone in the country can see are now being
I live
defaced.
there.
So it's just
I live
awful.
there. I live close to there. It's my
Yeah.
home city.
It is.
Mhm.
Aren't you sad?
It's very sad. Just some of the stuff is just ridiculous. And what they did to the World War II
Oh,
memorial is just heartbreaking.
it really is, and it seems like every day you hear more of what they're doing. But so
At the Lincoln Memorial, they
yeah,
did stuff there. Yeah.
yeah, and Lincoln's probably my favorite. uh, but yeah, um, so although we didn't take our annual trip to DC this year and haven't met on Capitol Hill, what we have been doing in the last year or so is we've expanded our organization to the state level. So, as I mentioned, we have some state directors. We're only missing a handful of states where we don't have representation with the director. But otherwise, those state directors are leading the charge on their own state fronts. And gathering up women who represent different parts of each state in the same way that we were representing different states at the federal level. So we have expanded our efforts to more of a local type feeling, which just means that it's more time for us volunteers. We're all volunteers, and any funding that we get usually gets trickled through to whatever educational purposes that we're trying to help with in terms of marketing and fundraising, and in some cases trying to help some of the women when we do go to DC travel to DC, because historically we've all been doing that on our own dime, which you live in DC, so you know how expensive of a city it is. But you know, you think about people coming from hundreds of miles away and having to fly in, and just even to, you know, take a cab in DC is expensive, or Uber or whatever. So we have a couple different fundraising things that we do. We take donations. We have a 501c3 that we're working with. It's Amanda Suffolk's. Have you talked to Amanda yet?
She is coming on next week, I believe. Actually,
Nice.
this week.
Okay, yeah, she's our Ohio director. But she has an educational 501c3 that she's allowing us to use for any dollars that come our way for education purposes. The organization itself, the DC Project Foundation, is a 501c4. So we are happy to take cash donations that help us in our advocacy at the state and federal level. We also have on our website, dcproject.info, we have you can go there and you can join us as a volunteer or a delegate. You can also make a cash donation, or you can buy t-shirts. And I think we have a few other accessories. I think we have socks and caps and some stickers, I think, that will help us. And then we're having a match. Diana had the inaugural match about, I think it was last year in the fall sometime. It's a 2-person 3-gun match, so it's a team match, and whoever participates in the match gets set up with either a woman or a junior shooter for the competition. And I think Jerry Nikolic was there, and I don't know who's going to be there this year, but it's at the Reveille Peak Ranch in Burnett, Texas. October 30th through November 1st. So they're going to do a whole bunch of, you know, extra fun Halloween stuff. And those of us who are fortunate enough to work in the industry, we work really hard to try to find sponsors in the firearms industry to give us prizes. So we have usually a nice prize table at the match, you know, and so we take the registration fees. And running a match, as you know, is an expensive venture. But it also helps us to kind of get the word out about what the DC Project does. And we have been donated some product from a lot of our friends. And so we'll be partnering with Gunbroker and running some auctions with some products, guns and some packages and things along that line. I know for sure that we have some Henry rifles that we'll be auctioning off on Gunbroker. And we're open for people who want to volunteer and help out and who are willing to go and talk to legislators. What we do as volunteers when we're not actually setting up meetings, those of us who are sort of at what I would call the leadership level, I'm on the advisory board for the DC Project. We are in the process of putting materials together to help educate all of our delegates and volunteers on how to turn around and go back and educate their legislators and people that they, you know, come across, even just regular folks, just to let them know how important it is to get out and vote. Make sure that you understand where people and lawmakers are on the Second Amendment when you go to the polls, so that you know what you're voting for. And even consider those types of things when you're voting in even something like a school board election, your local school board. That's kind of where it starts. It's a lot for 50 of us to take this national. So everything helps. Every dollar is needed and put to good use.
Yeah, I looked up. Amanda will be on Wednesday.
Oh, you'll love her. She's got her own radio show, Eye on the Target.
Yeah,
And
that's where I know her from.
yeah, she's a bulldog. That woman. She's pretty amazing.
Yeah, all the women of the DC project are pretty amazing.
Yeah, they really are. I mean, you've got an Olympian. We've got, I mean, the list is endless of the inspirational people that are part of our organization. I'm proud to be part of it.
Headhunters NW said he really, or she, I'm not sure if they he or she, but whoever they are, they enjoyed the chat. I don't know why sometimes StreamYard we broadcast to a bunch of different places, so it doesn't show up all the time. It's like not all the chats, so we miss a lot of chats. So I try to keep it straight.
Well, I know Headhunters Northwest. It's a woman, and to plug her, she is, I would say, the best executive recruiter in the shooting, hunting, and outdoor industry. So, yeah, if you're looking for somebody to put the right person in a role at your company, she's your gal.
Well, that's why I don't assume anyone's male or female.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see Fed Life out there talking about Amanda kept his wife occupied a SHOT Show this year. Yeah. But I want to thank you for coming on. It's been great having you. Like I said, that you're the first of 2 weeks of full DC Project women. So for the next 2 weeks, you're going to see DC Project women. They're going to be talking about the DC Project. They're going to be talking about their states and what they're doing.
You're gonna have a good time. This is really exciting. It's an exciting group of people. They all have different kind of energy. Each of us is different and has our own story. I kind of wish that we had like a camera crew that followed us around when we're in DC and could just see the atmosphere and what it's really like inside, let's say inside a congressman's office when we sit down on their couch and we're all kind of, 6 of us in a room together and we have a half an hour just to chat about the Second Amendment. Who would have thought that Diana's idea about bringing women to DC to do this would have grown into something that is now being done at the state level?
Yeah, next time you all come back to DC, whenever that is, whenever the country stops burning and
right,
people are, like dying of sickness. I don't know, probably zombies, aliens. I don't know. There's supposed to be some huge ass dust cloud coming over now from Africa.
Doesn't it feel like something else is going to happen? Just waiting for it to drop.
It's like when I read about the dust cloud, I posted on Facebook. It's like, who had dust cloud in June on the poll? Dust cloud. It's just crazy. I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah, like the murder hornets. I mean, I just thought that was a joke for the longest time.
Yeah, it's just like, what the hell is going on? I have no idea. 2020 can go away and stay away from all I care. I'm not going to eat. I don't even know what's going to happen at SHOT this year or whatnot. I have no idea.
I saw that they just posted something on Facebook the other day about how the Venetian and the Sands Convention Center is going all extreme on cleaning and that kind of stuff. But
yeah, I saw that. But who knows? By the time
it's gonna feel different,
It's gonna be smaller, I think.
I think so. And when I go to SHOT Show, it feels like I'm going to a family reunion, and I hug everybody. So I don't know if if I'll be allowed to hug anyone, and that'll really piss me off if I can't.
Fed Life say he has 15-1 locust in October.
I think it's going to be worse than locust.
Yeah, well, we'll see if we make it to October. All right, Laura, thank you so much for coming on. Anytime you want to come back, just let me know.
Absolutely. And like I said, I'll pray for your niece. And send happy thoughts your way. And anybody wants any information about the DC Project, it's www.dcproject.info.
Yeah, thank you so much, and definitely
Thank you.
check out those guys at the DC Project. They are awesome, great friend of the show. We're gonna have more on. But yep, that is it for me today, guys. I'll be back on Wednesday. In fact, I have a meeting at the 10 tomorrow. I'm writing a story tonight about gun owners of America suing Ralph Northam over universal background checks. That will be out tomorrow. Breaking news. If you haven't heard, the lawsuit was filed tonight at 7:30. I might or might not had insight that it was going to happen. Being director of GOA and stuff. But I also write for Emily, and you can check out my stuff over there. And that is it for me. I will see you guys later. Enjoy, love one another, be safe out there, and remember, like, comment, and subscribe. And remember, what I always say in life is short, so don't get kicked in the nuts. Bye. And I hit the wrong button, so my video didn't play.